includes representatives of more than the 40 Canadian military units that took part in operations on D-Day and across the Battle of Normandy.
Maintenant, nous demandons à ceux qui sont en mesure de le faire de se lever pour l'arrivée de la garde d'honneur des Forces armées canadiennes. Aujourd'hui, la garde comprend des représentants de plus de 40 unités militaires canadiennes qui ont pris part aux opérations du jour J et à la bataille de Normandie.
Officers, fall in.
Please remain standing for the arrival of our official party. Veuillez demeurer debout pour l'arrivée de nos représentants officiels. Brigadier General Derek Macaulay, Commander of the 5th Canadian Division and Deputy Commander of Joint Task Force Atlantic. Brigadier Général Derek Macaulay, commandant de la 5e Division du Canada et commandant adjoint de la Force opérationnelle interarmée de l'Atlantique.
To the commander of the 5th Canadian Division, General salute. Please hand up. Guard, shoulder up.
Rear Admiral Craig Baines, Commander of Maritime Forces Atlantic's Joint Task Force Atlantic. Contre-amiral Craig Baines, commandant de la Force opérationnelle interarmée atlantique des Forces maritimes de l'Atlantique.
Guard, to Commander of Maritime Forces Atlantic and Joint Task Force Atlantic, General salute. Please hand up. Guard, shoulder up.
Mr. Andy Fillmore, Member of Parliament for Halifax and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage and Multiculturalism. Monsieur Andy Fillmore, député pour Halifax et secrétaire parlementaire du ministre du Patrimoine canadien et du multiculturalisme.
His Honor, the Honorable Arthur J. LeBlanc, the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, and Her Honor, Mrs. Patsy LeBlanc. Son Honneur, l'Honorable Arthur J. LeBlanc, Lieutenant-Gouverneur de la Nouvelle-Écosse, et Son Honneur, Madame Patsy LeBlanc.
Guard, to his honor, the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. Royal salute. Present arms. Guard, shoulder arms.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Julie Payette, Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada.
Mesdames et Messieurs, veuillez s'il vous plaît vous joindre à nous pour accueillir Son Excellence, la très honorable Julie Payette, Gouverneur général et Commandante en chef du Canada.
Guard, to Her Excellency, the Governor-General of Canada. Royal salute. Present arms.
Please be seated as the Governor General inspects the Guard of Honor. Veuillez vous asseoir pendant que la gouverneure générale procède à l'inspection de la garde d'honneur. As dawn broke on June 6, 1944, Allied troops stormed German defenses on the beaches of Normandy, France. D-Day had arrived. Assigned a section of the coast codenamed Juno Beach, Canadian forces faced difficult odds that day and in the weeks and months to follow as they began a campaign to liberate France that would last until late August.
À l'aube du 6 juin 1944, les troupes alliées prirent d'assaut les défenses allemandes sur les plages de Normandie, en France. Le jour J était arrivé. Affectées à une section de la côte portant le nom de code Juno Beach, les forces canadiennes ont fait face à des difficultés ce jour-là et dans les semaines et les mois qui ont suivi, alors qu'elles ont entrepris une campagne de libération de la France qui devait durer jusqu'à la fin du mois d'août. Des dizaines de milliers de Canadiens ont servi sur terre, dans les airs et en mer pendant la bataille de Normandie, y compris plus de 90 000 soldats canadiens. Le prix de la victoire allait être terriblement élevé, entraînant quelques 18 000 pertes au sein des troupes canadiennes, dont plus de 5 000 membres ayant payé le prix ultime.
Tens of thousands of Canadians served on land, in the air, and at sea during the Battle of Normandy, including more than 90,000 Canadian troops. Victory would come at a terrible cost, some 18,000 Canadian soldiers becoming casualties, including more than 5,000 who paid the ultimate price. 75 years later, Canada and the world remembers.
75 ans plus tard, le Canada et le monde entier s'en souviennent. Parmi nous aujourd'hui sont plusieurs de jeunes Canadiens et Canadiennes, membres de Cadets Canada, qui tiennent dans leurs bras des bottes de combat.
Among us today are many young Canadians, members of Cadets Canada, several of them holding in their arms combat boots. From Victoria to Corner Brook and Toronto to Churchill, over the past few months, more than a dozen cities have marked the 75th anniversary of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy with departure ceremonies for very special boots of remembrance. At each event, a single pair of combat boots was solemnly placed on a train in honor of the tens of thousands of young Canadians who exchanged their civilian shoes for military boots some 75 years ago. For many, the journey that would eventually take them to Juno Beach began on trains to Halifax, where convoys of ships waited to carry them across the ocean to the battlefields of Europe. Too many would never return home.
De Victoria à Corner Brook et de Toronto à Churchill, plus d'une douzaine de villes ont souligné, au cours des derniers mois, le 75e anniversaire du jour J et de la bataille de Normandie avec des cérémonies de départ de ses propres bottes du souvenir très spéciales. À chaque événement, une seule paire de bottes de combat a été placée solennellement dans un train en l'honneur des dizaines de milliers de jeunes Canadiens qui ont échangé leurs chaussures civiles contre des bottes militaires il y a plus de 75 ans. Pour un bon nombre d'entre eux, le voyage qui les mènera finalement à la plage Juno commence par un voyage en train jusqu'à Halifax, où des convois de navires les attendent pour les transporter de l'autre côté de l'océan en direction des champs de bataille d'Europe. Beaucoup d'entre eux ne sont jamais revenus.
In just a few moments, we will welcome the very first pair of boots of remembrance to make that symbolic trek across our great country. Their journey began in March, when 8 veterans of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy were on hand in Vancouver to send them on their way.
Dans quelques instants, nous accueillerons la toute première paire de bottes du souvenir à faire cette traversée symbolique de notre grand pays. Leur voyage a commencé en mars, lorsque 8 vétérans du jour J et de la bataille de Normandie se sont rendus à Vancouver pour le grand départ.
This powerful symbol of remembrance reminds us of defining moments in our history and of Canada's long record of defending peace, justice, and freedom around the world. It reminds us of all those who have left home to fight on distant shores, those who returned forever changed, those who gave their lives in the service to our country, and those who continue to serve today. With the help of the young Canadians here with us this afternoon, it also reminds us of our continuing commitment to remember.
Ce puissant symbole commémoratif nous rappelle des moments marquants de notre histoire et la longue histoire du Canada dans la défense de la paix, de la justice et de la liberté dans le monde. Il nous rappelle tous ceux qui ont quitté leur pays pour se battre sur des rives lointaines, ceux qui sont revenus au pays marqué à jamais, ceux qui ont donné leur vie au service de notre pays et ceux qui continuent de servir aujourd'hui. Ce sont ces jeunes Canadiens qui sont ici avec nous cet après-midi qui nous rappellent aussi notre engagement continu de se souvenir. Nous invitons maintenant ceux qui sont en mesure de le faire à se lever pour l'arrivée des bottes du souvenir afin de souligner le 75e anniversaire du jour J et de la bataille de Normandie.
We now invite those who are able to rise for the arrival of the Boots of Remembrance, honoring the 75th anniversary of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy.
Thank you. Please be seated. Merci. Veuillez prendre place.
Stand up! East!
Nous avons vraiment la chance d'être accompagnés cet après-midi par des vétérans du jour J et de la bataille de Normandie, dont certains ont parcouru de longues distances pour être avec nous aujourd'hui. Il nous fait plaisir de présenter ces invités d'honneur. Au fur et à mesure que leurs noms seront nommés, chacun remettra une rose à un membre de notre contingent de cadets. Les fleurs seront déposées avec les bouts du souvenir en l'honneur de leurs camarades tombés au champ d'honneur.
We are truly lucky to be joined this afternoon by veterans of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy, some of whom have traveled long distances to be with us. We are pleased to present these guests of honor. As their names are called, each will present a rose to a member of our cadet contingent. The flowers will be laid with the boots of remembrance in the honor of their fallen comrades.
Warrant Officer Retired Georges Couture landed at Juno Beach with the Royal Winnipeg Rifles. Captured on June 8, 1944, he spent more than 10 months as a prisoner of war. Mr. Couture lives in Calgary, Alberta. L'adjudant retraité Georges Couture a débarqué à Juno Beach avec le Royal Winnipeg Rifles. Capturé le 8 juin 1944, il sera prisonnier de guerre pendant plus de 10 mois. Il vit aujourd'hui à Calgary, en Alberta.
Able Seaman Retired Charles Starks was born in Greens Pond, Newfoundland. He served during D-Day with the Royal Navy and currently resides in Mount Pearl, Newfoundland and Labrador. Le matelot de deuxième classe retraité Charles Starks est né à Greens Pond, Terre-Neuve. Il a servi le jour J au sein de la Marine royale et réside actuellement à Mount Pearl, à Terre-Neuve et Labrador.
Joining us from Mississauga, Ontario, we are pleased to welcome Private Retired Henry Ayres. On June 6, 1944, Mr. Ayres was serving aboard the Lady Nelson Hospital ship, which provided medical support to the D-Day assault. Nous sommes heureux d'accueillir le soldat retraité Henry Ayres, originaire de Mississauga, en Ontario. Le 6 juin 1944, M. Ayres servait à bord du navire hôpital Lady Nelson, qui a fourni un soutien médical pour l'assaut du jour J.
Rendu là?
Oui.
Non. C'est deux pages pareilles. On a fait M. Starks. On est rendu là.
Leading Seaman Retired Frederick Turnbull served with the Royal Canadian Navy and was a bowman on board a D-Day landing craft ferrying troops to the Régiment de la Chaudière to Juno Beach. Born in Montreal, Quebec, he currently resides in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Le matelot de première classe retraité Frederick Turnbull a servi dans la Marine royale canadienne et a été matelot d'avant à bord d'une péniche de débarquement du jour J, transportant les troupes du Régiment de la Chaudière à la plage Juno. Né à Montréal, au Québec, il vit actuellement à Halifax, en Nouvelle-Écosse.
Corporal retired Haviland Chiasson. Mr. Chiasson was born and raised in Miscou Island, New Brunswick, and served during D-Day and the Battle of Normandy as a radio operator with the North Shore New Brunswick Regiment. He currently resides in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Caporal retraité Haviland Chiasson. Monsieur Chiasson est né et grandi sur l'île Miscou au Nouveau-Brunswick et a servi pendant le jour J et la bataille de Normandie en tant qu'opérateur radio avec le North Shore New Brunswick Regiment. Il vit maintenant à Dartmouth, en Nouvelle-Écosse.
Lieutenant Colonel retired Russell Hubley was born and raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia. During the Second World War, he served with the Royal Canadian Air Force and was a gunner with 431 Squadron on June 6, 1944. Le lieutenant-colonel retraité Russell Hubley est né et a grandi à Halifax, en Nouvelle-Écosse. Pendant la Seconde Guerre mondiale, il a servi dans l'aviation royale canadienne et il était artilleur au sein du 431e escadron le 6 juin 1944.
Private retired Arthur Hubley was born in Lockport, Nova Scotia, and served during D-Day and the Battle of Normandy with the North Shore New Brunswick Regiment. He currently resides in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Le soldat retraité Arthur Hubley est né à Lockport, en Nouvelle-Écosse, et a servi pendant le jour J et la bataille de Normandie avec le North Shore New Brunswick Regiment. Il vit actuellement à Halifax, en Nouvelle-Écosse.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mesdames et messieurs, joignez-vous à nous pour rendre hommage à ces vétérans du jour J de la bataille de Normandie.
The brave young Canadians who landed at Juno Beach and who continued to push forward across the French countryside in the weeks and months to follow came from every corner of our country. They represented many races, religions, and backgrounds. All were willing to give of themselves to restore and rebuild a fragile peace. Together, they reflected a diversity that has become one of Canada's greatest strengths.
Les courageux jeunes Canadiens qui ont débarqué sur la plage Juno et qui ont continué d'avancer pour traverser la campagne française dans les semaines et les mois qui suivirent provenaient de tous les coins de notre pays, représentant plusieurs races, religions et origines. Ils étaient tous prêts à faire le don d'eux-mêmes pour établir et restaurer une paix fragile. La diversité qu'ils représentaient est devenue l'une des plus grandes forces du Canada.
Among those who served were thousands of First Nations members, Métis and Inuit. This afternoon, Chief Wilbert Marshall, lead of Culture, Heritage, and Archaeology for the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs, will offer a blessing in honor of all Canadians who so bravely served and sacrificed on the beaches of Normandy and beyond 75 years ago.
Parmi ceux qui ont servi, on pouvait compter des milliers de membres de Premières Nations, des Métis et des Inuits. Cet après-midi, le chef Wilbert Marshall, responsable de culture, héritage et archéologie pour l'Assemblée des chefs Mi'kmaq de la Nouvelle-Écosse, offrira une bénédiction en l'honneur de tous les Canadiens qui ont si bravement servi et tout sacrifié sur les plages de Normandie et au-delà, il y a de ça 75 ans.
I'm going to take my glasses off to read now. Just looking for my speaking notes here. One second here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for an invitation here today. As lead chief of Culture and Heritage and Archaeology of Assembly of First Nations and Mi'kmaq Chiefs, I'm honored to be a part of your special guest event also. First, I would like to welcome you all to Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of Mi'kmaq since time immemorial. Today, we come together with both here in Canada and in France to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day and Battle of Normandy. Today, we gather and honor those who bravely fought for our freedom, and also thank for all who sacrificed so much to protect us all. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Canada have a long and proud tradition of military service in our country. It is estimated as many as 12,000 Indigenous men and women served in the war effort, with 4,000 Aboriginals enlisted specifically in Second World War. There are stories that touch all our communities and our families and our loved ones and our lives. Although our First Nations people, wounds ran deeper for many, as those who served were treated like second-class citizens when they returned home. Indigenous people have every reason to be proud of wartime contributions. For those all Canadians who served us, they should have received a hero's welcome, which we all did in our communities and around surrounding areas. Before I close, I would like to thank and recognize our esteemed elders and Samaganis, which is a word for soldiers in Mi'kmaq, and our veterans, Don Julian and Stephen Christmas, who are here to talk about the Mi'kmaq contribution of World War II's. And on behalf of Assembly of First Nations, I'd like to share your knowledge and stories, but importantly, thank you for your sacrifices and contributions to the war effort. Wala'alio, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci. Nous sommes maintenant heureux d'accueillir le Dr. Don Julian, colonel honoraire du Centre d'instruction de la 5e Division du Canada et directeur exécutif de la Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. Il nous aidera à comprendre les expériences uniques des peuples autochtones du jour J et à la bataille de Normandie grâce à l'histoire du soldat Charles Doucette, membre de la Première Nation de Member 2 au Cap-Breton en Nouvelle-Écosse. Celui-ci débarqua à Juno Beach avec les North Nova Scotia Highlanders et consentit le sacrifice ultime au service de son pays le 7 juin 1944 à la baie d'Ardenne, près de Caen, en France.
We are pleased to welcome Dr. Don Julian, Honorary Colonel of the 5th Canadian Division Training Centre and Executive Director of the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. Dr. Julian will help us understand the unique experiences of Indigenous people at D-Day and during the Battle of Normandy through the story of Private Charles Doucette. A member of Member 2 First Nation in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, he landed at Juno Beach with the North Nova Scotia Highlanders and gave his life in service to his country on June 7, 1944, at the Abbaye d'Ardenne near Caen, France.
Koi chila suk tigam sid no kama balda si bibani mi agota chigu and giskuk. Some of you may have understood what I said, and some of you, most of you probably don't. Koi in our language is hello. Vijila suk tigam sid no kama means welcome family, friends, and relatives. Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Their Honors, special guests, veterans of the Second World War. I have been requested by the Mi'kmaq veterans to give just a few minutes of talking about the Second World War and the Mi'kmaq involvement. In the historical records that I've looked at, we had 126 men that joined and 2 women. We lost 5. One of our soldiers was executed on June 7th at Abbaye Ardennes. It was at the hands of a Panzer Division Colonel Kurt Myers. 18 soldiers surrendered. They were surrounded by the Panzer Division. They thought that they would live the rest of the war in concentration camps. 11 of them were shot in the back of the head on the 7th of June. Colonel Kirk Myers told his SS troop, no prisoners will be taken after D-Day. So 11 died on June 7th, and on June 8th, 7 more were executed. And it wasn't for a little boy playing in the yard of the Abbey on February 8th. He found a jawbone. He told his mother that I found something. His mother marked the grave, then reported to the authorities. In February of 1945, the Canadian Graves Concentration Unit arrived to investigate the site and determined it was, in fact, Canadian soldiers. The first grave that they exhumed contained 6 of our soldiers, our Canadian soldiers. One of them was our Mi'kmaq Private Charles Doucette of Member 2 First Nation. Eventually, all 18 men were recovered, plus 2 additional. There was 20 that were shot at the Abbey. I'm here today to pay respect to all Canadian soldiers that took part in the D-Day operations, and to those soldiers that made the ultimate sacrifice. As a Mi'kmaq peacetime veteran, thank you for the opportunity to pay tribute to all Canadian troops. During all wars and those that fought in the Second World War, and especially those that were involved during D-Day Operation Overlord. On Juno Beach, the Battle of Normandy in France. Today, we are honored to have some of the family members of Private Doucette with us. The youngest daughter of Private Charles Doucette, Marie Doucette, is here with us. Marie, would you please stand? Thank you, Marie, and also the grandchildren of Private Doucette. Could you please stand? On behalf of the Mi'kmaq, thank you for your sacrifice, as well as all the family members of the Canadian soldiers that participated in D-Day operation on June 6, 1944. I'm also a member of the Mi'kmaq Grand Council. I am a captain of the Mi'kmaq Grand Council. So on behalf of the Sibiga-Negri District of the Mi'kmaq Grand Council, I would like to thank all veterans and all Canadian Forces members for their service to our country and to mark our 75th anniversary of D-Day. Walalio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Julian. Merci. It is said that when one member of the military serves, their whole family serves with them. And that was as true 75 years ago as it is today. Allied action at D-Day and throughout the Battle of Normandy not only changed forever the lives of men and women who were there, it also touched the millions of loved ones they left behind here in Canada. Even after the war ended, the effects of this momentous milestone on our history would continue to be felt by those who returned and by the families and communities they would build in the years and decades to follow. In this way, the events we commemorate today continue to shape the very fabric of our society.
On dit que lorsqu'un militaire est en service, c'est toute sa famille qui est en service avec lui. C'est aussi vrai il y a 75 ans qu'aujourd'hui. L'intervention des Alliés le jour J et tout au long de la bataille de Normandie ne changea non seulement à jamais la vie des hommes et des femmes qui s'y trouvaient, mais celle-ci a touché aussi les millions d'êtres chers qu'ils ont laissés derrière eux, ici au Canada. Même après la fin de la guerre, les effets de cette étape importante sur notre histoire ont continué d'être ressentis par ceux qui sont revenus et par les familles et les communautés qu'ils allaient bâtir dans les années et les décennies à venir. De cette façon, les événements que nous commémorons aujourd'hui continuent à façonner notre société. Pour nous donner un aperçu de l'impact continu du service d'un Canadien au jour J sur sa vie, sa famille et sa communauté, nous sommes heureux d'accueillir M. Richard Tilley. Monsieur Tilley est le fils du capitaine de vaisseau Harold Tilley, un officier de navigation à bord d'une péniche de débarquement qui débarquait des troupes à la plage de Juno le matin du 6 juin 1944. Le capitaine de vaisseau Tilley figure sur l'affiche du jour J d'Anciens combattants Canada.
To offer insight into the lasting effects of one Canadian's service at D-Day on his life, family, and community, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Richard Tilley. Mr. Tilley is the son of Captain Navy Harold Tilley, a navigation officer on a landing craft delivering troops to Juno Beach on the morning of June 6, 1944. Captain Tilley is featured on Veterans Affairs Canada's D-Day poster.
Your Excellency, honored veterans, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. When I was asked to speak about my father, Harold Tilley, or Hal, the veteran shown on the poster as mentioned, I thought of my father's 39-plus years of military service. I thought about the 3 warships, the squadron of warships, and the recruit training base he commanded. I also thought of his lifelong service to his community, much of it here in Nova Scotia. But I quickly realized that one of the most significant events of his life was his participation in D-Day. Way back in May 1944, Dad had just finished his sub-lieutenant's technical courses and was supposed to be on leave. However, he knew something was about to happen, and quickly he found himself volunteering to be the navigator for a formation of 3 large landing craft. These weren't small boats. At 158 feet long, they were about twice as long as the Halifax Dartmouth ferry. Although Dad was a good navigator, these landing craft were the only vessels on which he had no training. So, at the age of 20, early in the morning of June the 6th, 1944, Dad was aboard landing craft infantry large number 263 as they approached Bernier-sur-Mer, or Juno Beach. On board were about 200 members of the Chaudière Regiment, some very seasick, and many had bicycles. German bombs were being dropped around them, and there was shell fire from ashore. Nevertheless, they successfully landed the troops and turned around to get more. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. They'd sustained damage and were sinking. In Dad's words, "We turned around smartly and dashed back onto the beach again. When the tide went out, they saw the underwater obstacles that had punched their landing craft full of holes. They also discovered there were live mines about 2 feet on either side of them." He was a good navigator, but I think he was a lucky one too. And this wasn't the only threat. They could hear the sounds of gunfire nearby, and in a letter home from Juno Beach, dated June the 9th, Dad told his parents about the booby-trapped German pillboxes and quipped, quote, "And not wanting to become a booby myself, I'm being very careful." It took 3 days to repair the landing craft, but by then they were being used as a holding area for German prisoners of war and as a minor hospital. Only after a week, when the beachheads were truly secure, did Dad and his landing craft return to England. One almost unique aspect of my father's D-Day experience was that his landing craft had on board the official photographer, Gilbert Milne. Years later, when Dad visited the War Museum in Ottawa and saw the photos, he told the family, "That was my D-Day. That's exactly how I remember it." Dad's story is just one of thousands of D-Day stories, but I hope it gives you a small personal window on what happened that day. As a family, we are very proud of Dad and hope that his legacy and that of many others can be passed on to future generations. Sadly, my father died 6 years ago of causes directly attributable to his wartime service. I therefore wear with pride the memorial cross in his name. Thank you.
Nous invitons maintenant M. Andy Fillmore, député pour Halifax et secrétaire parlementaire du ministre du Patrimoine canadien et du multiculturalisme, à s'avancer et à prendre la parole au nom du gouvernement du Canada.
We now invite Mr. Andy Fillmore, Member of Parliament for Halifax and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage and Multiculturalism, to deliver remarks on behalf of the Government of Canada.
Veterans, service members, cadets, and family members, and honored guests and friends, thank you for being here today at the Willow Park Armoury as we meet, as Chief Wilbur said, on Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. My name is Andy Fillmore, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Halifax, and it's my profound honor to represent the Government of Canada here today. D-Day, June 6, 1944, a day of profound and pivotal importance for our country and for the world, and a day of tremendous loss. One of the more than 150,000 Allied troops who went ashore in Normandy on this day 75 years ago, over 10,000 were killed or wounded. Of that number, 359 Canadian soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice on D-Day, with more than 700 other men wounded. Canadians suffered more casualties than any other division of the British Army Group during the Battle of Normandy that followed. Men and women came from all over the world to help defeat Nazism and reestablish freedom in occupied Western Europe. Months of planning and deceiving the enemy. The weather, the tide, the time, everything had to be just right. The details were crucial. The stakes were unimaginably high. Pour une paix d'une population de 11 millions de personnes, le Canada a frappé bien plus fort que son poids ne laissait présager à l'époque de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, grâce aux contributions des hommes et des femmes en uniforme. The Canada was assigned its own landing beach on D-Day as a testament to the esteem with which the Allied High Command held our troops. Alongside the British and American forces, they spearheaded assaults along an 80-kilometer stretch of the coastline of occupied France. C'est ainsi que débutait la bataille de Normandie, la campagne qui, depuis, est reconnue comme le début de la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Today, Canadians of all ages and from all backgrounds are gathered in communities across this country, in schools, in Legion halls, in public squares, to remember in words and in silence the valiant service members who fought on the land, on the sea, and in the air on D-Day and during the Battle of Normandy. There was also a Government of Canada delegation in France, participating in ceremonies and paying tribute to our soldiers and in commemorative events on that sacred ground where so many gave their lives 3/4 of a century ago. Overseas and here in Halifax, members of the Canadian Armed Forces are representing the regiments that fought in D-Day in the Battle of Normandy. And most importantly, we have several veterans of that storied campaign joining us here today, whom you've now met. Nous en avons tout appris sur notre histoire militaire et nous avons découvert les visages de la liberté dans le cadre des événements qui ont eu lieu au cours des derniers mois partout au pays et qui ont mené jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Combat boots, coined the boots of remembrance, have been making their way across the country, representing the hundreds of thousands of Canadian troops who rode the rails all those years ago, headed here to Halifax, to then set sail from Pier 21 for the front lines in Europe. A visual reminder of all those who traded in their civilian shoes for military combat boots. Les Canadiens de tous les coins du pays ont répondu à l'appel pour servir durant la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Ils ont laissé leurs familles et leurs amis derrière et se sont rendus très loin de chez eux pour défendre la liberté, pour défendre la démocratie, et pour défendre la paix. And this is why we are gathered here in the historic military port city of Halifax 75 years after our women and men passed through, to ensure the memory of their sacrifice and of their legacy is cherished today and passed on to future generations. A legacy and history that we must remember and that we must ensure future generations remember. Thank you for being here today as we recognize and remember the more than 90,000 Canadian soldiers who took part in the Battle of Normandy and over 1 million Canadians who served in the Second World War, as well as all of our brave women and men who have served since and who continue to serve our country in uniform today. Canada remembers and honors their courage and their sacrifice. Le Canada se souvient et rend hommage à leur courage et leur sacrifice. We will remember.
Thank you. Merci. We welcome Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Julie Payette, Governor General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada, to deliver remarks.
Nous invitons Son Excellence, la très honorable Julie Payette, gouverneur général et commandante en chef du Canada, à prononcer quelques mots. Mesdames et Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, veterans of the Second World War, veterans of the force, members of the Canadian Forces, membres de la communauté, les cadets, les jeunes qui sont ici aujourd'hui. Bonjour. I do not speak very good Mi'kmaq, but I have learned some of the language of the Algonquin people, because the residence of the Governor General is seated on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. I would like, if you allow me, to greet you in the beautiful Algonquin language. Nidanami kwak, kakina nishnabek, umaka tewach, atshish kakina megwach, kadaki nidutamowach. Less than 12 hours ago, my team and I and a delegation of Canadians had our feet dug deep in the sand of Juno Beach. We had been in France for 2 days with veterans of the Second World War. And we stood on the beach this morning with the first light, a ceremony which is held every year by the Queen's Own Rifle Regiment of Toronto, to commemorate the sacrifice, the service, and the accomplishments of Canadians on Juno Beach. We were there with Lieutenant General Richard Romer, 95 young old. He served. He was a World War II ace, flying over the beach at 7 a.m. on June 6, 1944, with his Mustang and a wingman, trying to do a bit of a reconnaissance so that the people that came after him on barges and ship would have an idea of the situation. Lieutenant General Romer went on to fly 135 operational missions
in Normandy and Northern Europe. He says he's been hit once. We believe him because he's still here to tell the story. And with us on the beach also were the proud members of the Queen's Own Rifle Regiment, who perhaps face the hardest heavy fire when they landed ahead of the Fort Garry horses, which had been put astray. But they fought valiantly. They were the first to liberate the first house, which is today Canada House, right there on Juno Beach. If you've never seen that, it's an incredible sight, because every single other soldier that came after passed by that house. And it was a symbol of the energy, the resilience, and the bravery of the Canadians that had liberated that first line. The QOR kept on. They were the first to make their targets, but they lost heavily. C'est drôle parce que ce matin, sur les plages de Juno, il faisait magnifique. Le soleil était fantastique. Et on entendait les petits oiseaux. Les prairies étaient pleines de coquelicots, full of poppies everywhere in France this morning. Et tout le monde était radieux.
And everyone was radiant.
Il était impossible de
Now,
s'imaginer la
during
catastrophe.
the Normandy campaign, it was absolutely impossible to understand what kind of disaster would happen on June 6th.
The chaos, the destruction, the horror of what happened on that day. And we were standing on the beach seeing the shoreline all the way to the seawall, 180 meters de l'eau jusqu'à la digue. Une petite parcelle de terrain
And a little
qui est devenue l'enfer.
piece of land that became hell on earth.
180 meters, which our troops stormed and held, contributing. When you come from a country like Canada where war does not exist, when you grow up like me in a country where war does not exist, it's unfathomable. But here we were, Canadians, and it was not the first time. We had been there in the Great Wars, and we'd been there at other conflicts to help our friends before. But at this war, we showed up in numbers. And on that morning, you, the veterans, were there from all across our beautiful country. The Canadian Scottish Regiment, the Regina Rifles, the Royal Winnipeg, the Elgins, the Hussars. We had Le Régiment de la Chaudière, the North Shores of New Brunswick, and the proud North Nova Scotia Highlanders in the first waves, suffering the worst of casualty. At the end of the day, our Navy, our Royal Canadian Air Force had helped clear the seas and clear the skies, but still we had lost 359 men. This was just the first day. Et à partir de ce moment,
And starting
il
then,
fallait encore se battre.
they still had to fight. And it was 2 long months and a half for the Battle of Normandy, where Canadians often were facing almost impossible situations.
So many times in the 2.5 months of the Battle of Normandy, all the way to the liberation of Caen in July. And then at the end, when they did liberate Paris, the 25th of August, 1944. So many times our Canadian soldiers showed their bravery. One of the commanding officers of the Royal Winnipeg said that Canadians fought with gallantry, skills, and cool daring. And I believe that wholeheartedly. At the liberation, une fois que la ville de Paris a été libérée le 25
Once
août
Paris was
1944,
liberated on August 25th, 1944,
dans les carnets de guerre,
already in the war journals there were stories.
every single time Canadians fought, sometimes they bent, but they never were broken, and participated then on to the rest until Victory Day. There were so many casualties, considering. There were so many lives lost. Most of these lives, the 5,000 lives that were lost by Canadians in Normandy, these young people who left their home, their cities, their farms, to go and fight with and against young people that they didn't even know in the name of freedom and peace and liberty for all. Well, all of them, most of them, lie in two cemeteries now in the very land of the country they fought to liberate. Yesterday we were in Bény-sur-Mer where 2,049 are buried. And tomorrow there will be another ceremony in Bretteville-sur-Lez, un autre cimetière où 2,700
Another cemetery
de nos
where
Canadiens sont enterrés.
1,500 Canadians are buried.
They did not lose their lives in vain. We have a duty to remember, un devoir de mémoire. Il faut se rappeler le
It's
sacrifice.
important to remember the
Il faut se rappeler
sacrifice,
la souffrance. La
to
souffrance des
remember the
populations
suffering
occupées, la
of the
souffrance des
occupied
blessés, la
people,
souffrance des familles
the suffering of the
qui les
families,
supportaient si loin, la souffrance des
the
vétérans qui
suffering of the veterans.
made those daring moves with comrades falling and others being wounded in body and soul. We need to remember. But one, perhaps, of the most important lessons that we get from this is a lesson of hope. The reason at the end was to provide a free world, opportunities for all to live a free life. And that is a message of hope. Il faut se rappeler.
We must remember,
We
always.
must remember. We must remember this crucial battle. We must remember the amazing accomplishments that were made on that day, 6 June 1944. And we must remember the lives that were lost, the bodies that were wounded. But first and foremost, we must remember that working together is our hope for the future, for our future, us all. Mes amis les vétérans, je vous remercie.
Friends, veterans, I thank you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart,
of a very grateful
from
country.
a grateful country.
Thank you for what you have done for Canada and what you continue to do. Merci. Le Canada se rappelle. Merci.
Canada remembers.
Thank you. Merci. Alors que nous commémorons et honorons la bravoure de ceux et celles qui ont servi et tout sacrifié le jour J et à la bataille de Normandie il y a 75 ans, j'invite l'aumônier des Forces armées canadiennes, le Major Derek Marshall, à nous guider dans un moment de réflexion.
As we commemorate and honor the bravery of those who served and sacrificed at D-Day and the Battle of Normandy 75 years ago, I invite Canadian Armed Forces Padre Major Derek Marshall to lead us in a moment of reflection.
For some, this is a time of prayer, and for others, it is a time of quiet contemplation. Whichever this time is for you, may we turn our thoughts together and the reasons why we are here today. And so, let us pray. Prions. Loving God, you who are our shield and our defender, in these moments of reflection, we turn to you in prayer, full of many mixed emotions which linger in those who have come today to remember the 75th anniversary of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy, and those who have taken up the torch which others have entrusted to defend freedom, justice, democratic values, and good governance. Nous sommes réunis ici liés par
We
des
are
souvenirs
gathered
que nous
here
partageons
and bound
pour
by
remercier
the
les
memory
citoyens
that
et
we share,
citoyennes de notre
here to
pays
thank the people of
qui
our
ont servi
country
si
who served
honorablement
honorably
au sein des forces armées
within the
canadiennes
Canadian Armed
et qui
Forces
ont fait honneur à leur
and
patrie en
who
mer,
honored their country in the air, on the beaches, and at sea. Their exploits are etched in our memory.
God, lift the anxiety which results from watching our beloved veterans of every conflict continue to labor under wounds, seen and unseen, to soul, mind, and body, where the wounds of war have caused them to become estranged from you, from those they love, and from themselves. In your merciful grace, we pray, succor them and strengthen all caregivers and therapeutic programs which work on their behalf. May all our veterans, old and youthful, ever be surrounded by a loving community of close comrades in arms, supportive friends, and loving family members. Bring relief where they suffer, support where they are in need, and wholeness where they have felt bereft and alone. Ô Dieu de la sagesse,
O God of
fortifie
wisdom,
ceux et celles qui nous
fortify
dirigent dans
those
le cadre
who
de
lead us
l'exercice de leurs responsabilités.
as we exercise
Nous prions
responsibilities.
pour notre gouverneur
We
général,
pray for our Governor
pour
General,
notre Premier ministre,
for our Prime
pour
Minister,
notre ministère de la Défense
for
nationale,
our Department of National
pour notre
Defense,
ministre des anciens combattants,
for our Minister of
combattants,
Veterans Affairs,
et pour notre chef d'état-major
and
de la
for our
Défense.
Chief of the Defense
May
Staff.
they and all who serve in positions of authority work to promote and foster peace in all its fullness, healing the divide between nations and individuals, between differing groups and factions of race, creed, or political values, and overcoming fear, hatred, suspicion, or indifference to the common good of all. God of all nations, watch over Canada and its peoples, that throughout our home and native land, our diversity might be celebrated as strengths rather than be a cause for division. So the abiding peace of which we have dared to dream, and for which we have mightily labored for so long, and for which we have paid so dear a price, might at last be firmly established on the earth. Pour tout cela, nous te
For
prions
all of
et
that,
nous
we pray
invoquons
to you,
ton saint nom.
and
Amen.
we invoke your holiness.
Thank you. Merci. Au nom de notre délégation de vétérans du jour J de la bataille de Normandie, M. Henry Ayres récitera l'acte du souvenir. Il sera rejoint par le général à la retraite Walter Nitinchuk, sous-ministre d'Anciens combattants Canada, et par le Dr. Don Julian, qui prononcera l'acte de souvenir en Mi'kmaq.
On behalf of our delegation of veterans of D-Day and Battle of Normandy veterans, Mr. Henry Ayres will now recite the Act of Remembrance. He will be joined by General Retired Walter Nitinchuk, Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs Canada, and by Dr. Don Julian, who will share the text in Mi'kmaq.
The Act of Remembrance. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Ils ne verront pas comme nous que leurs avons
They shall
survécu.
grow not old
Ils
as
ne
we that are left grow
connaîtront jamais
old.
l'outrage ni le
Age
poids des
shall not
années.
weary them, nor the
Quand
years
viendra
condemn.
l'heure de
At the
crépuscule
going down of the
et
sun
celle de l'aurore,
and in the morning,
nous nous souviendrons d'eux.
we will remember
Nous
them.
nous souviendrons d'eux.
We will remember them.
Deblu dagan delwi de minich migwide de manich. Negmout magisigu wadig. Kudeginu gisigu wadig. Dan dewi jok te jig ma sespede de midig. Ach ma se dan deze bunkuk ma obelade midig. Dan jinagu set nisa asich Ahisit Bug, Ginu Miguide de Manest, Ginu Miguide de Manich.
Thank you. Merci. Il me fait maintenant plaisir d'accueillir l'adjudant Sophia Kennedy et maître de deuxième classe Cara Brassard, deux cadets qui représentent des jeunes Canadiens à lire la promesse de se souvenir.
I now invite Warrant Officer Sophia Kennedy and Petty Officer Second Class Kira Brassard, two cadets representing the youth of Canada, to read the commitment to remember.
They were young, as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them.
Ils étaient jeunes, jeunes comme nous.
They were young, as
Ils ont
we are
servi,
young.
donnant
They
généreusement
served,
d'eux-mêmes.
giving freely of themselves.
En
To
dépit
them
du
we
temps qui
pledge,
passe,
amid the
porter
winds
le
of time,
flambeau et de ne
to
jamais
carry their
oublier.
torch and never forget.
Souviens-nous
We will
d'eux.
remember them.
Merci. Thank you. During the next few minutes, you will hear the last post, followed by 2 minutes of silence, the lament, and the rouse. Our bugler today is Petty Officer Second Class Tim Elson, and our piper is Warrant Officer Catherine Buckland.
Au cours des prochaines minutes, vous entendrez la dernière sonnerie qui sera suivie par 2 minutes de silence, l'élégie et le réveil. Notre joueur de clairon aujourd'hui est maître de deuxième classe Tim Elson et notre cornemuseur est l'adjudant Catherine Buckland. Mesdames et messieurs, s'il vous plaît, veuillez vous lever pour la dernière sonnerie. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to please rise for the playing of the last post.
Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Stand up! Eat!
As our ceremony draws to a close today, you will notice our young cadets taking on a new role. Throughout today's event, these young Canadians have served as guardians of our history. In their hands, they held not just simple boots, but the stories of hundreds of thousands of young people who came before them, ordinary men and women who did extraordinary things, each a face of freedom we enjoy today. In response, they have made a pledge to carry those stories forward so that the contributions of those who gave so much on our behalf will never be forgotten. As a sign of that commitment, they now hold in their hands symbolic torches of remembrance as a reminder that we all have a duty to carry with us and to share the stories we heard today.
Alors que notre cérémonie tire à sa fin aujourd'hui, vous remarquerez que nos jeunes cadets assument un nouveau rôle. Tout au long de l'événement d'aujourd'hui, ces jeunes Canadiens ont été les gardiens de notre histoire. Ils tenaient dans leurs mains non seulement de simples bottes, mais aussi l'histoire de centaines de milliers de jeunes qui les ont précédés. Des hommes et des femmes ordinaires qui ont fait des choses extraordinaires. Chacun étant un visage de la liberté dont nous jouissons aujourd'hui. En réponse, ils se sont engagés à transmettre ces histoires afin que les contributions de ceux et celles qui ont tant donné en notre nom ne soient jamais oubliées. En signe de cet engagement, ils tiennent dans leurs mains des flambeaux symboliques du souvenir pour nous rappeler que nous avons tous un devoir de se souvenir et de partager les histoires que nous avons entendues aujourd'hui. Je demande maintenant à tous ceux et celles qui sont en mesure de le faire de se lever pour l'interprétation de God Save the Queen. I would now ask those who are able to rise for the playing of God Save the Queen. S'il vous plaît, demeurez debout pour le départ de Son Excellence, la très honorable Julie Payette, gouverneure générale du Canada. Please remain standing for the departure of Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Julie Payette, Governor General of Canada.
To Her Excellency, the Governor General of Canada, Royal Salute, Priest Head out!
Veuillez rester debout pour le départ de nos distingués vétérans. Please remain standing for the departure of today's honored veterans.
Join us once again in saluting and thanking our veterans of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy as they exit the ceremony area. Je vous demande de vous joindre à nous une fois de plus pour saluer et remercier nos vétérans du jour J et de la bataille de Normandie alors qu'ils quittent la zone de cérémonie.
Maintenant, nos représentants officiels partiront. The official party will now depart, beginning with His Honor, the Honorable Arthur J. LeBlanc, the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, and Her Honor, Mrs. Patsy LeBlanc. Son Honneur, l'Honorable Arthur J. LeBlanc, Lieutenant-Gouverneur de la Nouvelle-Écosse, et Son Honneur, Madame Patsy LeBlanc.
Guard, to his honor, the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. Royal salute. Present! Ah!
Mr. Andy Fillmore, Member of Parliament for Halifax and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage and Multiculturalism. Monsieur Andy Fillmore, député pour Halifax et secrétaire parlementaire du ministre du Patrimoine canadien et du multiculturalisme.
Rear Admiral Craig Baines, Commander of Maritime Forces Atlantic's Joint Task Force Atlantic. Contre-amiral Craig Baines, commandant de la Force opérationnelle interarmée atlantique des Forces maritimes de l'Atlantique.
To Commander Maritime Forces Atlantic and Joint Task Force Atlantic. General salute. Present! Ah!
Brigadier General Derek McCauley, Commander of the 5th Canadian Division and Deputy Commander of Joint Task Force Atlantic. Brigadier Général Derek McCauley, Commandant de la 5e Division du Canada et Commandant adjoint de la Force opérationnelle interarmée de l'Atlantique.
To the Commander of the 5th Canadian Division. General salute. Present! Ah!
Mesdames et Messieurs, C'est ainsi que se termine la cérémonie d'aujourd'hui. Je vous remercie de vous joindre à nous et vous demander de rester sur place pour le départ de la garde des drapeaux.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony for today. I thank you for joining and ask that you please remain in place for the departure of the flag party.
And that is the conclusion of the D-Day 75th anniversary commemorations taking place in this country, in Halifax, following what we saw over in France, where the Prime Minister was attending along with other world leaders. Our reporter, Brett Ruskin, will join us later in the program with more on the Canadian ceremony. The courage and sacrifices of D-Day came alive again today on the beaches of northern France. It's been 75 years since the massive invasion that led to the liberation of Europe.